Big welcome to you all to our channel. We are Team Crushing the Meta, and you can call me D-Boy. We are back with way more videos and series. This is a new series, and it's called Cheap Ass Decks. So, why does it call cheap ass decks? Because this is about budget decks. There are a lot of people are telling me we want to start playing Vanguard or just asking in general which deck or clan we should start with. Which clan is not that expensive to start with, and they want a pretty okay strong deck for 50 till 100 bucks. So 50 euro to 100 euro. 100 euro deck is a good deck, but most people would say it's not an tournament deck. Well, those people are wrong, believe me, because you could make a pretty okay solid Vanguard deck for 100 euro if you want to. I'll show you how, and I will be doing deck profiles on decks like that, which are not that expensive. So, first of all, before we start the deck profile on the first episode, which would be on Shadow Pauldings, before we do that, I would like to talk a bit about the Gold Paulding trial deck that we had, or starter deck, whatever you want to call it. It was a pretty good deck. I think Blazing Paulding would do the second episode or third episode on that deck. Otherwise, I could do it myself. But he's more of a Gold Paulding player than I am. The deck include, or the trial deck includes, two Perfect Guard, two Stride Fathers, two of the Gurgit Grade 3. So it has pretty okay Grade 3 lineup. Grade 1 lineup is also pretty okay. You have some good strides, but the deck is really good by itself. So you have to buy two trial decks to play it. But the trial deck is only 10 euros, so about 10 bucks. So for 20 euros, you have an okay deck. For another 30 euro, you can buy some of the cards to include with the deck, and then the deck would be very, very good for about just 50 bucks or 50 euros. Another deck that I also recommend playing if you're not a Paladin player is the Kagero deck, the Kagero Legend deck. Um, this deck is really, really good. I'm really happy that Bushiroad made the Legend decks, especially the Kagero one. You get a deck box. It's really a shame that you don't get the sleeves with it, but still okay. So you get the deck box. You get these two to put between your cards and stride, or just to put between your cards. Also, the deck include pretty solid Grade 2 and Grade 1 lineup. You only need Stride Fathers with Grade 1, and maybe another Perfect Guards, which I will show you when I do the deck profile on Kagero. Uh, and also the strides are really good. The grade 3 lineup needs a bit of work, but it's still pretty solid deck. I do like it. I'm very happy with them that they made this deck. It is, in my opinion, the best trial slash legend deck, starter deck that we have got. So, without further ado, let's start up with the deck profile on the Shadow Paladins. So, Shadow Paladins are also, most of the cards are from um, the legend deck of Francis Kiyomori. Um, this legend deck was also very good, but I'm mixing this deck up with the Revengers to make the deck even better. So, your main grade 3 is Blasted Dark Diablo. This is the card that you want to go into to get most of your skills off. He has two skills. His first skill is a GB2. When you are paying the cost for striding for a G unit which has a blaster in its card name, so let's say you go into your Diablo stride, then you can discard anything from your hand, and that card gets an extra 3 grade. So if you discard a critical trigger, draw trigger, or a great one, anything is okay for striding. So that's why he's really good to when you go into your first or your second um, Diablo stride, which I will show you how does that work. His second skill is, during your turn, if you stride into Phantom Blaster Diablo, so if you stride into him, then you can target one of your opponent's rearguards and retire it. That skill is really good. Why? Because of his skill, which I will tell you when I go into the strides. So you play 3 copies or 4 copies of him. Why? Because, as I said, he is the one that you want to go into as much as you can. Next grade 3 is the Phantom Revenger Break Ride. So the Revenger Break Ride is pretty solid card. It's good. Why? Because sometimes you have to go back into this card, and when you go into him first because you don't have the dark in your hand, then you can Break Ride on the top of him and you still get a skill. His skill is, he's a Break Ride. If you don't know what that is, it's a limit break 4. If you don't know what a limit break 4 is, it's when you have 4 damage. So first you have 4 damage, and when you ride Angry 3 or above on the top of him, you get the skill, which is you count +1, and you give your Vanguard an extra 10k. You call up to 1 Rearguard from your deck into the Rearguard circle, which is a grade 2 or less, and you give that Rearguard an extra 5k. The skill is really good because you can call and make your formation better. You can call up the Blasted Dark Revenger to kill up rearguards, and you can also call units that you can use with your stride. So he's pretty good in my opinion. I would like playing at least 2 copies of him. But if you don't have him, I recommend playing this card. It's also from the Legend deck. He has okay skill when he attacks. It's GB1. If the attack hits, you count +1, and then you can call a grade 1 or less from your deck into the rearguard circle. If you don't know what a GB1 is, um, he has GB1 skill, he has GB2 skill. The GB is the cards that you have face up in your G zone or on your Vanguard circle. So when you stride, if it's the first stride, then you already have your GB1, and with the second stride, you have 1 on your Vanguard and 1 in your extra deck face up, so you have your GB2 active. So that's the GB skill. For the grade 2 lineup, I only play 8 grade 3s, 14 grade 2s, and or I mean 11 grade 2s and 14 grade 1s. So 8, 14, 11. And of course 16 grades, 0s, triggers, and 1 starter. Grade 2 lineup. Start up with 4 copies of Blaster Dark Revenger. Why? Because you need him. Why do you need him? Because you need to kill as much rearguards as you can in the turn that you want to go into your Diablo to just finish your opponent off. His skill is you count +2, so it's a heavy cost. When you write him as your Vanguard or you call him as a rearguard, you count +2 and you kill one of your opponent's rearguards in the front row. Play 4 copies of him because you need him. Then you play 4 copies of the Ember Clone. If you don't know what the Ember Clone is, it's a card in each clan. Each clan has one of these. The skill is when it attacks the Vanguard, you count +1, and she need to be boosted, and you need to have a GB1 active. So first, GB1, she's boosted, she attacks the Vanguard, you count +1. And then, if you do so, then the Shadow Paulding one call you a grade 1 or less. So you attack with her, she's boosted, attack the Vanguard, GB1, counter +1. You can call up to 1 grade 1 or less rearguard from your deck to your field. As stand or as rest, doesn't really matter. Next, I play 3 10k vanillas. Why? Because new players need to experience this. The 10k vanillas, so these are grade 2s with 10k power. They're really good, especially when you get rushed early game, or when you have him as a rear guard and your opponent can't kill him, or even if you have a 6k booster behind him, he still attacks for 16. 16, 21, 11, 26. So these are the magical numbers that you can attack to hit your opponent's finger. Uh, that's why you play the 10Ks. Most new players would say, I would like to play anything which has a skill, but I recommend playing the 10k vanillas just to experience how good this card is. And then when you get better units, then you, of course, you can play them. Create one lineup, start up with 4 perfect guards. You can play any perfect guard that you want to. I recommend playing the old ones because these could guard the rear guard and the fin guard. So what a perfect guard does is you discard one card from your hand and you nullify the attack. And of course you also have rear guards or perfect guards with a skill. So you have the witch one. The witch skill is when you guard with her, you discard a card and you draw a new card. So she's really good to just replace the card in your hand, but I don't recommend playing more copies of her. Just one, uh, if you want to. Otherwise, you could play any other perfect guard. You could also play the G perfect guards. There are perfect guards which could unflip the damage, so it's a counter charge. If you don't know what a counter charge is, this is your damage. So let's say you have 3 damage, 2 of them are face down. When you unflip the damage, that's a counter charge. So you have perfect guards which has the skill to counter charge. But those perfect guards can't guard the rear guards as well. Then next grade 2 or grade 1, you play 3 copies of Durant and 3 copies of Karen. Durant's skill is when you call a Blaster Dark Revenger in front of her, then you can use her skill to unflip one of your damage. So she's a counterblast, a counter charge. So his skill would be only count plus 1. That skill of her is pretty effective. Um, if you want to use his skill more than once. Also, sometimes you just call him in front of her and you don't use his skill, but you use her skill to just countercharge. And then you also play 3 copies of Karen. Karen's skill is when you call her as a rear guard, then you can search your deck for Phantom Blast Dark Diablo and put it into your hand. To do so, you need to show your opponent a grade 3 from your hand, and you need to discard a card from your hand. So you search him, you show your opponent a grade 3, and then you discard another card. Could be another grade 3, it could be just a draw trigger, it could be anything. And then she has a second skill, which is a continuous skill on the rearguard circle. When you retire her for your own skill, so when you sacrifice her, her sacrifice is for 2 units. So that's really nice, especially because you do sacrifice 3 units using his skill. So she is 2 already, and you could sacrifice any other rearguard. Then I played 2 of the Revenger Trumpeter and 2 of the Blaster Trumpeter. This card only work with your Blaster Finguard, so you need to have Blaster Dark Diablo as your Finguard to use her skill. Um, her skill is when she's called into the regular circle, you can Soul Blast 1, and then you search your deck for a grade 1 or less and call it into the regular circle. On the other hand, her skill is not chibi active and you don't need you can play it with any other Revenger Vanguard if you have that. Or it doesn't really need a Revenger Vanguard. You can play her with anything. Her skill is when you call her, you can count plus 1 and then you search your deck for a grade 0 Revenger and you call it into the regular circle as rest. The one you call is most of the time the draw trigger, but you call it and then you can retire it using his skill. So it's pretty okay skill, but it does cost you a counterblast, and the card that you can call is not that effective. But I will show you a combo that you can use her with, and that's with one of your stride units. Then let's go into the trigger lineup. You do play 4 or even 8 crits. The reason why you play 8 crits is because you want to finish your opponent off with the turn that they let your Diablo hit. And that turn you could do your opponent 2 damage, and with a critical trigger you do them 3 damage, and that's when you finish the game off. And there is really no reason to play stand triggers in this deck because you don't have the strong rearguards to stand. And of course because you kill your own rearguard, so sometimes you can't even stand anything. So the draw triggers, you play 4 copies of the Revenger draw trigger because this is the card that you want to call. I would recommend playing all the Revenger triggers if you have them because it's pretty easy to play in this deck. Draw triggers, you use them because sometimes you could just call them as boosters and then retire them, or just it's pretty okay to play draw triggers. You do need them because you sacrifice a lot of your own rearguards, so you do need to replace them. And you don't really have the hand advantage because you don't play the Great One, then that when it's called, you Soul Blast something and you draw a card because it is a bit expensive for this deck. 4 heal triggers, the Revenger one, because you do need them. Heal triggers are important, they save your ass, and they also, you can use them to G-Guard. If you don't know what a G-Guardian is, it's when you have a heal trigger in your hand and you have a G-Guardian in your extra deck. A G-Guardian have a green color on the bottom, the triggers have yellow, the normal units are black, and the strides are red. So the G-Guardians, as I said, are green. It also said G-Guardian when doesn't really have any attack points. It does have a shield, which is 15k. Most your G-Guardians have 15k shield, but they also have a skill. So how to use the G-Guardian, you should, or you could go and watch our video on the G-Guardians. It's the first episode from Crazy Game Changing, but also you can go and watch a different fights video, which they made a pretty amazing video on the G-Guardian. They explain it pretty well, but also I'm explaining it right now if you want to. Um, if you have a heal trigger in your hand, you can discard it, and if your finger's at grade 3 or above and your opponent's finger's at grade 3 and above, you can call the G-Guardian from your extra deck to the rearguard circle or the Guardian circle. You go to the Guardian circle and then you can just guard with him. He's already 15k, so he's 5k more than your heal trigger. But also, when this card goes back, it doesn't go into the drop zone, but it goes into the extra deck face up. So you already have a GB active, so that's really good. Also, most of the G Guardians have a skill. The skill of him, this is the Shadow Paulding G Guardian for now. His skill is when you guard with him, you can target up to 1 grade 1 or less rare guard and also guard with that as well. So let's say you have called a critical trigger from your deck with the grade 1 Revenger skill. You call the critical trigger, then you can um, attack with him or boost with him, and then when you guard with your G Guardian, you can target that critical trigger and call it to the G Guardian as well to guard with that. So it's pretty okay skill, especially when you play against decks that tell you you can't guard with uh, grade zeros from your hand, like Silent Tome effects or skills. Next, I do recommend playing um, this starter. You can play any starter that you want to, but I do recommend playing him. His skill is when you retire him, he also, when you retire him as a sacrifice, he is a sacrifice of 2. So that's pretty nice. Um, it's the same as Curran, so you should play him, or you could. Then for the extra deck, as I said, playing the G Guardian is pretty important, especially with the GB1 active, and you can go into your Diablo first stride turn, because with him you need up to 2 face-up cards in your G zone, and this already 1, and using his skill you get the second. So if you have 3 copies of him or even 4, I would play them. But if you don't, or if you want to upgrade your deck, I would definitely go for the Cray Elementals. The Cray Elementals are really good and you can play them in any deck. Their Screw skill is when you guard with him, you can discard anything from your hand and he gets an extra 10k shield. So he would be a 25 shield by himself. Desmiel's skill, on the other hand, is pretty good to guard the rear guard. So when they attack, you can use him to guard with his only 15k, but also he does have the skill which gives one of your rear guard resist. Resist is that your opponent can't target that unit for an skill, but also he does give your one of your rear guards, the skill that it can't be hit by your opponent units. So until the end of the turn. So it's just like a perfect guard for the whole turn for that rare guard. So it's really good. I do recommend playing one of each if you have them. If you don't, then you need to play more copies of this card. Then for your strides, first you have to play 4 copies of the Diablo. So Dark Dragon Phantom Blaster Diablo is your ace, is your killer. His skill is you count +1 and you unflip a copy of himself face up from your G zone. It's called a Persona or G Persona Blast. So you G Persona Blast, you count +1, and then if you have, you need at least 3 regas to use his skill, which is you retire 3 of your own regards, and then he gets an extra 10k and a critical. But some units that you have could be sacrificed as 2, so you could just use him and any other card, or use Kern and any other card. Then if you do so, if you have already retired 3 of your own, that skills when you attack. So let's say you have your rear guards right here. So let's say this is the column that you make. So it's an 11k column, pretty good. You have to make 11k, 16k, 21 columns, because those columns are the important right numbers to hit your opponent's finger. So let's say you attack with 16 into your opponent's finger, then you attack with Diablo. You have already used the skill, then you now retire 2 or 3 rare guards, but this is sacrifice for 2, so those are 3 rare guards. You sacrifice them, and then your opponent can't guard the attack. If they want to guard the attack, they have to retire 2 of their own rear guards. If they don't have 2, or if they don't want to retire them, then they can't stop the attack. So he has already an extra crit, which is pretty devastating, but still, it's pretty good to use his skill with the Blaster Darks. So let's say you have the Revenger Blaster Dark, and you have the Blaster Dark Diablo as your Vanguard. You stride into him, you use his skill to retire one of your opponent's rear guards, you call him, retire another, and then you hope that your opponent have 1 or less rear guards, then they can't stop his attack. And that's the finisher. That's how this deck works, to just kill your opponent by retiring their rear guards and then killing them with the Phantom Blaster Diablo. So you play 4 copies of him because they are needed to just, if the first attack didn't succeed, then just finish them off with the second. If you didn't use your G Guardian first, then you can't use him as your first stride. So then you have more options to go into one of these 3. Because the other strides are pretty expensive, that's why you choose one of these 3. Gwen the Reaper could be used on any Vanguard. And the Revenger one could be only used if you have a Heart with a Revenger in its card name. So Heart is the card that is below your G unit. So let's say you have Phantom Blaster, or Blaster Dark Diablo as your Vanguard. If you stride into him, then this is your heart and this is your Vanguard. Your Vanguard also get the name of your heart, so that's why this card has now two names. The Phantom Blaster Dark Diablo, or Blaster Dark Diablo, and his name. So that's why this card only works with Revengers. What this card does is when you attack with him, or when you, his skill is once per turn. It's an act skill, so you can use it in your main phase. You can retire one of your Revenger units, and then you can call a card from your deck with Revenger in its card name. That card should be a grade 1 or less. Let me see. Yeah, you can call up to one grade 1 or less Revenger from your deck to the rearguard circle. Why is this card so good? It's because sometimes you call the draw trigger, as I said, and also sometimes as rest. Then you can retire him and call anything else to replace him. So it's pretty good skill. And then you have, if you don't have a heart with Revenger and card name, then you have to use one of these two. Gwen the Reaper is a pretty solid card when he attacks. If the attack hits, then you can call up to one grade 1 or less from your deck to the rearguard circle. It's pretty good skill to just put more pressure on your opponent. Most skills which, when they hit, they do something your opponent would want to guard it. And then you also have the new triple rare from the Fighter Collection. His skill is also pretty okay. What he does, the cost is pretty heavy, but it's really good if you go into him before you go into your Phantom Blaster Dark Diablo. Before you go into your finisher, you go into him. What he does is you Count Blast 3, and then you Soul Blast 3, and then you choose up to one card from your G zone and turn it face up, so you can pay his cost, just turn anything face up. It could also be a G Guardian. Then use his skill, which is you have to retire as many rearguards from yourself, and the same is for your opponent. So let's say you retire 3 rearguards, your opponent would have to retire 3. Remember, his skill doesn't work with your starter, because you can retire him, but he doesn't really, he's not the sacrifice of 2, because this is different. You have to choose up to 3 rearguards and retire them, and your opponent would have to do the same. So if the rearguards that are retired with his skill is 6 or more, so let's say you retire 3 of your own, your opponent would retire 3 of their own, then you can use his skill, which is to draw 2 new cards. He get an extra 20k, and you counter charge 1, and you soul charge 1. So his skill is pretty okay. Just before you go into your Phantom Blaster or the Dark Dragon Phantom Blaster Diablo, before you go into him, because he's your finisher, you can just make a setup play by using him if you have the soul and if you have the damage. Otherwise, you can just go into anything else. So yeah, this was the deck. I hope you enjoyed the deck profile. I've tried to explain most of the cards and most of the game mechanics. If you still have a question about how the deck work, or about some of the cards, or even about some of the game mechanic, you can just put a comment in the comment section below, and we will make sure that we answer your question as fast as we can. Also, stay tuned for the next episode, and that will be on Kagero. Kagero is more of my specialty than Shadow Paulding or Gold Paladins. So yeah, stay tuned for that. And if you want to see something different, if you want to see a match between decks playing, or you want to see different deck profiles, then you can also put a comment in the comment section below, because we have a lot of different decks that you can see. Also, stay tuned for the next video, which should be a video on Overlords as an expensive deck. And you have, of course, the second episode um, of this series, which is the cheap ass Overlord. So you can compare the two and see how the price difference in the decks make the deck stronger, or how, if you are a skilled player, it doesn't even matter which deck you play of the two to win it. Because I played the expensive deck, against Blazing Paulding when he just made the the deck from the legend, and he won because the cards from the legend himself are pretty strong by themselves and they work really good together. So I will be showing you that deck profile um, after this. So yeah, thanks for watching, guys, and stay tuned for more videos, and go to our channel if you want to see more. We have a lot of different decks, different deck profiles, different matches to see. So yeah, thanks for watching, and until next